And joining us now is the subject of the film, artist Paul Whitehead and Trisha Van Cleef. Welcome to the show.
Hi there.
Hello, welcome. First, congratulations on the film. It is fantastic. And please forgive my clumsy introduction, but it feels like addressing you only as Paul is emitting a total part of your spirit. Just going forward, how shall I address you?
Well, you're talking to Paul right now because I'm dressed as a man.
All right.
Cool.
Wonderful.
Thanks
All right,
for clarifying
Paul.
that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul.
How did the documentary come about?
Before COVID happened, I was doing a series of pop-up art shows where we would take a vacant retail space for a week or 2 weeks, have an art show, and then move on. And I decided that we needed like a 20, 25-minute film that would be on a loop like you have in museums, to explain a little about my career and also the background of the show, because it was a one-man, one-woman show. Half of the art was Paul, the other half was Trisha. So we decided we'd shoot a short film. Well, I got together with the director of Fear, who's the girlfriend of a friend of mine, and she came over and decided to interview me. And it quickly became apparent that it was more than a 20-minute film we were making, because she was asking me some very good questions, and I felt comfortable with her. So she went to her boyfriend, who was actually the producer, and she said, we've got the makings of a good film here. Can we keep shooting? And we said, keep going, keep going. So we just met regularly after that, and I got very comfortable with it. It was great,
Well, yeah, you can totally. Your ease in front of the camera was palpable, and it really is quite a remarkable documentary. It's an exploration of art, an exploration of gender identity. It is of the creative spirit. It really is just mwah. Thank you so much for having this out in the world now. Can you tell? I know when people. Because it's available to start streaming and video on demand later this week on the 9th, I believe. But for folks who haven't seen it, can you tell us a little bit about your start as a professional artist?
Yeah, I actually discovered I was an artist when I was very, very young. I got my first job to do a design when I was 14, and it seemed like this is what I wanted to do, I found my way almost by accident into the record business, designing record covers, which in the mid to late 60s was definitely the art form of the time.
Oh, yes,
definitely.
100%.
Yeah, it was like record covers were it, People got very involved with them. They had a very intimate relationship with the music through the cover, And I quickly discovered that I was a good collaborator. I would meet with a band who wanted a record cover, and I found out that I had a visual language that they didn't have. A lot of them just had a musical language. Because of my education, I was very familiar with, how to use a library, how to research stuff. So I'd go to the meetings with a big armful of art books and say, do you know about this guy? Do you know about this? You could use this kind of idea for your cover. So it kind of evolved, and they got to trust me. And I love collaborating. It's one of my strengths, I think,
Mm-hmm. Well, and it shows. I mean, there's a segment in the film. I loved the whole the billboard art gallery that you had set up in California. Like, I was like, what a brilliant idea, and only in California, and only during that time, could something like that happen. It reminded me. I remember, like, as a kid, there was a record store chain called Peaches.
Yeah.
And I remember just going and seeing like the gigantic album covers that had been like hand painted and were blown up all over the store, and just thinking that was just the coolest. So,
yes, it was.
So fun. Like, as I was watching, I'm like, oh my gosh, you're the coolest person that I've ever encountered ever.
I enjoyed the story of the Beatles, what ended up being the White Album, and you submitted, I believe, if I remember correctly, along with other people, some very interesting album covers, and in the end, they just said, let's just do the White Album, keep it white.
Yeah, I think Paul McCartney was the first. He got his own art director So they all said, "Oh, we have to have an art director as well." I think they had like 4 or 5 guys, and I was one of them because at the time I was the art director of Time Out magazine.
Uh-huh.
So I was invited to submit ideas, So they finished up with so much stuff, and all of it was great, of course, because it was for the Beatles,
Sure.
And so what happened is they really kind of cancelled each other out, and so they decided to go with the white cover.
Just overwhelmed with the possibilities, and they just went with a white cover. But so it's
it was also the quality of the ideas, and the ideas were just the best of London. Really, that's what it was.
I'm sure. Yeah.
So here you are. You're having a successful career, working in the music industry and your own artwork, and then Trisha emerges. You're very, very candid in the film that it started out like it's something like, behind closed doors. This is something between you and your wife at the time. And then it evolved into something bigger. Is there any way that you can kind of explain how she came out?
How it progressed?
Yeah, because I think I say in the film somewhere that the times were such that it wasn't weird for guys to wear feminine clothes,
Right.
I mean, growing your hair, wearing earrings and eye makeup, and I used to borrow girls' clothes. It was quite common, quite normal. And so then it evolved into the thing I said with my wife, right? And of course, as I created this identity, the person I saw in the mirror was like, "Oh, how interesting," And of course, I wanted to go out in the world, I wanted to go out and experience what it was like to go out in the world. My wife was very against that. She was very full of fear about what if the neighbors saw you and what if you get stopped by the police and things like that. I had none of that whatsoever, and I just wanted to go out. So eventually, I did. I ventured out, and what an experience that is!
Right? Yeah.
I mean, you got to understand that there's a very, very big difference between being a drag queen and going out as a cross-dresser into the world, because a drag queen does a performance,
right.
They lip sync or they do something on stage. When you go out in the world, it's you one-on-one with the world, and everybody judges you one-on-one. It's a very, very different experience.
Yeah, you have.
Sorry, what were you going to say?
Go on. Finish your thought.
So I was sort of enjoying that. I was very interested to see the people that reacted weirdly and the ones that accepted it, and it was not what you would expect. I found a lot of weird reaction from the art world. People you think would be very, very liberal and very understanding had the most adverse reaction. I remember once I was in a gallery for an opening looking at a picture, and there's a guy sitting next to me, and he caught sight of me, and he realized who and what I was, right? And he took like 2 steps away from me. It was like I had some disease, It was very strange.
Oh, wow. So I guess it only stands to reason that as you have, discovered Trisha and you being an artist, that to see how Trisha would paint.
Yes.
Do you remember that moment of like, well, what is it going to be like how does Trisha paint? And I love there is a total difference, just complete distinction between the art of Trisha Van Cleef and the art of Paul Whitehead.
Yep. It evolved, actually. I mean, it was a question I asked myself, and I quickly realized that her approach to art was a lot more spontaneous, a lot more in the moment than Paul, because Paul was very about drawing and working things out, perspective and all that kind of thing, and about ideas, Trisha was more like just doing it, right? So I started to experiment with abstract painting in my studio. I bought a bunch of canvases and just basically slack paint around and see what happened and so on, right? And I was like, yeah, okay. I kind of put them to one side. One night I came home, I'd been out, and I went in my studio, and I caught my hose on something in the studio, right? So I got a big run in my stockings. So I took my stockings off, threw them on the floor, right? Then in the evening I thought, wow, what if I put that together with that? What if I put the stockings together with the abstract paint? I wonder what that would be like. So I got into doing what I called stretchings, which was basically an abstract painting. Then I would stretch over the top of it hose, nylons or fishnets or whatever, stretching it over the top of the abstract painting and then fixing it. And I always set myself kind of a timeline. I didn't want to be too self-conscious about it. I didn't want to labor over it. It had to be spontaneous. Boom, it's done. So that's how Trisha approaches her art. And it's still the same way today. If I start to take too long over it and it starts to look like a painting that is, you can see the hand of the artist or the brush marks, I stop immediately. And it's quite disciplined to stop yourself, you know?
Yeah. It's like knowing when to stop. I'm so glad you brought up the whole stalking motif, because as the work was being shown throughout the documentary, Paul and Trisha, The Art of Fluidity, it was you could see that theme of I loved it. I was like, oh wait, that is like a torn fishnet going through here, and just how it kind of it was just very fascinating.
Is it seamless to go from Trisha's art to Paul's art because they are so different?
Well, we've been collaborating recently.
Okay.
We've been doing combos. It's sort of, the worlds aren't different. I mean, it's the same person. It's just the end is what's important. What are you trying to achieve? And a couple of my friends said, why don't you do the two together? Because a lot of my work as Paul includes kind of starry skies. It's something I've always been into. And so that's what Trisha's doing at the moment. She's doing what she calls starscapes, which are pictures of the heavens, not too ambitious, right? To try and paint galaxies and nebulas. Not too ambitious at all, right? Well, so we've started to do combinations, which work quite well.
I'm sure they do. And the other thing that struck me was your commitment to meditation, Hinduism.
Yeah.
Are those elements, in the example of the muddy water, when you let it sit, how the mud goes to the bottom and then the water becomes clear? That was such an interesting visual. Are you still utilizing your meditation skills and following the practice of Hinduism?
Oh, yeah, daily, yeah. I'm a follower of Yogananda, Paramahansa Yogananda. I've been for a long, long time. I mean, I think I first became involved in 67 and actually became an active follower when I moved to Los Angeles in 73. So, yeah, it's a daily practice, a daily reading, reading the lessons, reading what he has to tell you about how to live your life, basically,
Yeah, what struck me though that was very interesting is in the film you called yourself a closeted Hindu. Why closeted?
Well, if you know very much about Hinduism, it's a very, very complicated, very, very busy religion. There's thousands of gods,
Right. Yeah.
I don't really subscribe to all that. I don't really get into all the paintings and the statues and all the stuff that they do. I like to go for the core of what they believe, right? And it's a very liberal religion. It's very tolerant of whatever you want to do. I think their basic thing is, if you've got something going on in your life that's a hang-up or it's bothering you, do it. Do it to the ultimate and get it out of your system. It's like if you drink alcohol and it's a problem in your life, do it and you'll get fed up with it, That's the basic idea. And I love that basic idea. It's not preachy. It's like you are in charge of your own life. We give you the instructions and it's up to you to follow them or not, That's what I love about Hinduism.
Yeah, and that sense of spirituality and of being present is present throughout all of the film. Paul and Trisha, The Art of Fluidity. Gender is filled with so many gray areas, and yet the film and the way that both Paul and Trisha paint, they kind of smushes those gray areas into this bold, swirling, colorful cosmos and presents complex ideas. But basically comes down to ultimately a very simple idea. It's a part of who we are. And it's the courageous people that acknowledge this cosmos that's inside of them. What do you hope people take away from the film and your work?
That's a very good question. As we were making the film, it occurred to me, and I said this to Fia, the director, I said, if we can help somebody as a result of this film, someone out there that's really struggling with their gender, struggling with their social situation or their family situation, then we've done a great job. If we've done that, I'm very, very pleased, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I've got to say one thing very important. I had no input whatsoever in the editorial slant of this film, and I did that purposely. I said to Sophia, make the film. I want you to do your take on me. I don't want to interfere. I don't want to have any input whatsoever in how you cut this thing, which is kind of scary, you know, because
Yeah.
we did many, many hours of interviews, and she could have cut it to have me saying anything she wanted, you know. There was so much footage and so much of me talking, you know, she could have made it anything she wanted. The fact that it turned out the way it did, I think, is almost miraculous.
Well, and that comes
But it's
down.
also-
That comes back
the
to
subject.
Well, it comes back to the subject, but then in a way of your joy and skill at collaboration. You're like, here's what I'm going to offer, and as artist to artist, you know, you're working in a different medium. You're going to put together this puzzle piece, and having trust in that artist and what they have to say through your words
Yeah.
and your work.
Yeah, there was a couple of times, because I've done a lot of interviews throughout the years as an artist, as a painter, and I realized sometimes reporters come to you and they've already kind of written the article about you before they come, you know. They've got like a preconceived notion of you. And so they start to ask you questions that have only got really one answer, and it's the answer that they want, you know. So I'm very aware of that. Tria did that a couple of times. And I said, hey, I'm not going to talk about that. It's not something I'm interested in, you know, particularly political things. And so I would say, you know, don't ask me that again. You know, it's not something I want to talk about.
Okay.
You know.
Fair
So
enough.
I kept saying no. Eventually, she said, okay, I understand. What she had to deal with, what she had to edit, was a multiple different choice piece of work. I mean, she could have gone anyway with it, right?
Right.
The way she went, I think, was admirable. She was very almost middle of the road. She didn't come down one side or the other. You know, she sort of said, hey, this is somebody's life. To me, it was kind of peeking in the door, you know, and saying to people, did you imagine that people had lives like this or they lived like this? And I saw it once about a month ago, and I was able to watch the film almost like it wasn't about me, you know?
Uh-huh.
And it was like, oh, this is an interesting insight into someone's life. You know?
It really is. It really is. And not only just into your life, but into your work, and also into the very the fleeting aspects of art. You know, a lot of going back to the sand paintings that is a recurring theme throughout the film. There's just something so wonderful and present, if that makes sense. You know, the thing that struck me so much was about being where you are, being who you are, and all of this is temporary, and it will disappear into the ether.
Yeah.
And you certainly.
I'm glad
I'm sorry. Finish your thought.
I'm glad that you get that, because basically that is me. That's my personality. That's the way I am in the world.
Well, and it
And I
comes
have to
through.
Well, I owe a lot of it, obviously, to meditation, because meditation gives you a very, very uncluttered, very clear view of the world and where you are in the world. You know, it's non-sensational. It's sort of, here I am. By doing the practice, by meditating regularly, you get in touch with spirit and you understand where you are in the big picture. I'm so glad that it came across as well. I've had this comment from many people.
It came across,
One of the things-
and you are the definition of living your best life.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much.
So what is next? What are you working on at the moment?
Well, that's a very good question. What is next?
I know, right?
Yeah, makes it interesting. Keeps life interesting.
I've just hooked up with an old friend of mine who has bought a lot of data from Google, and he's producing 3D, I don't know what you call them there, maps of cities, right? They're actually 3D digital printouts of cities. and they're amazing. It's like every building in the city is visible.
Oh, cool.
And he's hooked at me and said, I'd like you to help me paint these and sell them as works of art. So that's my current project I'm working on, which is fascinating.
Always valid. And back to the collaboration.
Yes, and a huge undertaking.
Collaboration. Yeah. The first city we're doing is Honolulu, which is fascinating because it's has a volcano.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm in the middle of doing that right now.
All right.
What we're going to do, we're going to focus on certain areas. Say the Eiffel Tower would be a good example, right? You take the Eiffel Tower and you print out 1 kilometer around the Eiffel Tower.
Mm-hmm.
Or you could do London or whatever your city is, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's a new thing for me. It's something I've never done before. It's very detail-oriented, so I'm really getting into that. I'm also writing. I've just finished a novel, which I'm very pleased with. Yeah, I'm a busy lad.
You are, and that's what keeps life fantastic for you. You're constantly challenging yourself, and it shows. And we look forward to seeing what you come up with next, because this is certainly a wonderful piece of film. Paul and Trisha, the art of fluidity. Thanks so much for being with us.
Great.
All right. Well, Paul and Trisha, The Art of Fluidity is available to start streaming on and video on demand on July 9th. You get 2 enthusiastic thumbs up.
Yes, you do.
Right over here. Paul Whitehead, thank you so much for joining us today. And please continue bringing beauty to the world through your work, through your spirit, and through your actions. And good luck with that pee-pee pad lady.
Got to see the film, folks.
Gotta see the film. Gotta see the film.
You got to see the film to appreciate that. Yeah.
Yes, indeed.
Paul Whitehead and Trisha Van Cleef somewhere. Thank you so much for joining us. And again, thank you for bringing so much beauty to the world.
Thank you, Paul. We appreciate you.
Thank you.